So we were doing a spread of new ideas where we talked of various new religions which cropped up, and the prominent two among those 62 religions which were present in the between 6th century BC. Uh, the two prominent were the Buddhism and Jainism. We talked about them in detail, and the life of Buddha and Mahavira, their teachings, and the areas where these religions spread in India and even outside. So today we take up the new heading, the Sangha. The Sangha was established by Gautam Buddha in the 5th century BC. The term Sangha meant assembly of communities. That means now we talk of a term called Sangha. Now, what is Sangha? Sangha is basically a community. Now, once these monks or once these people left the religion, left their homes, now they needed some place to live. They needed one accommodation. They needed one group. Now, supposing all the followers of Buddhism, if they don't have any organization, the people do not have any group, then what would they do? So it was a term which was used so that they could have a community. Now it is used to refer to Buddhism or Jain groups. Now basically it was started by Buddhism, Gautam Buddha and Buddhism, but later even Jains followed these groups, and I mean they also formed groups and they were also calling themselves Sangha. Okay, it was founded to spread the message of Buddha far and wide. Now, but the main aim for forming these sanghas were so that these group of people can spread the message of Buddha to other people. So they came in groups, they gained knowledge, and they spread the knowledge to other people far and wide. Even Shudras could join the Sangha. Both Buddha and Mahavira realized that only those who left their homes could gain true knowledge. So an arrangement was made for them to stay together in the Sangha. So now Buddha and Mahavira, both of them knew that the true knowledge could only be attained once the person is free from worldly pleasures. And for that, he had to leave his home. So the person who is leaving a home has to be accommodated somewhere. So in that case, they decided for forming a group, and that group was known as Sangha. Okay, the Buddhist Sangha had the Buddhist preachers in it, and the Jain Sanghas had Jain preachers in them. And even the Shudras, that means the low caste people, could also join those groups or Sanghas. The rules for the Buddhist Sanghas were written in a book called the Vinay Pitaka. Now, underline the word Vinay Pitaka. This was a book which had all the rules written for the Sangha. That means the community who was following had to look forward to these rules which were given in this book. All men could join the Sangha. Children who wanted to join the Sangha had to seek permission of their parents. A woman had to take her husband's permission. Only emancipated or free slaves or the dasas could join the Sangha. Now, there were certain rules, and any man can join the Sangha. But for any child to join a Sangha, the permission of the parents was required. Now, if a woman wanted to join a Sangha, a prior permission from her husband was needed. Now, supposing there was a slave or a das who wanted to join a Sangha, he had to be free from his duties. That means his boss should free him from that slavery and then he could join the Sangha. Now, both men and women who joined the Sangha led simple lives. Obviously, they had no homes, they lived away from their worldly pleasures, and they lived a simple life. They meditated for most of the time. They went to cities and villages at fixed hours to beg for food. They taught others and helped one another. So now the duty of the Sangha was to live a peaceful and ascetic life. they used to major time was spent in meditation. That means praying, and then at the time they also went to various villages and cities asking for bhiksha, that is begging for food, and whatever was offered, whatever they got in bhiksha, they just ate it and satisfied themselves. They didn't hoarded anything, they didn't keep anything extra with them. And they helped, the Sangha people helped each other because they had no family member. So these Sanghas or the groups, they acted as a family, a larger family for each other. Those who joined the Sangha included Brahmins, Kshatriyas, merchants, and slaves. So the Sangha was joined by all walks of people. It was the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the merchants, and even the slaves could join this religion, these Sanghas. Okay. Now Viharas. Now once they have formed a group, they need to stay somewhere. They need a shelter. So for that, they had Viharas. Now Vihara is a Hindi word. Now basically, in English we call it monastery. We read it. The Buddha established many monasteries. These monasteries were called viharas. Buddhist monks lived in these monasteries. These monasteries were also the centers of education. As time passed, many supporters of the monks felt the need for more permanent shelters. Those were known as viharas. These viharas were made of wood and then of bricks. Some were situated even in caves and were dug out in hills in western India. So now they are telling you that people needed place, a shelter where they could gather for their learning, for their resting. So they had these viharas built or these monasteries built where major work was for teaching and preaching. And other than that, they also stayed here in groups. These shelters, these viharas were made of wood and bricks. Clear? You can see a picture of vihara here. This is a vihara. Now it is in bad shape, but earlier they were the like uh, present day hostels. There was lots of rooms where they stayed, monks stayed. Now, can you see this picture? When we will be doing any answer on Jainism, then I would like you all to make this symbol there. Okay? Okay, this is the emblem of Jainism. Is this much clear to
Okay.
each? Now we come on to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
next page called Did You Know? Panini the grammarian. He prepared a grammar in Sanskrit. In this period, he arranged the vowels. Uh, he arranged the vowels and consonants in a special order and formed formulae. He then wrote down the rules of grammar based on these formulae, around 3,000 of them. So now we know that Panini was a great grammarian. He wrote in Sanskrit and he wrote all the rules of Sanskrit. If you are uh, now you are doing Sanskrit as one of your subjects, you all know the proper systematic use of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is so grammatically correct language. So all these rules were laid down by a very prominent man called Panini. Okay, underline his name and what he did. Clear till here? Now, shortly I'll be sending you the explanation of Upanishad and also the question answers. So I would like you all to go through it, or should I just a second? Any problems you have, children?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I should I begin Upanishads and finish it off? Let me do it.
Yes, ma'am.
Upanishad. Okay. So we move on further. Upanishads. At the same time, when the Buddha was preaching, many Hindu thinkers were discussing new ideas about Atma, the individual soul, or Brahma, the universal soul. They raised questions about life and death and the need for sacrifices. Most of the ideas of these thinkers were recorded in the Upanishad. Now, please switch off the mic. Now, when the Buddhism and Jainism were spreading and were gaining popularity, it was then that the Hindu thinkers also started thinking of the drawbacks which they had, and they also tried to improve it. Their new ideas included the Atma, that means a person's soul. How can it unite with Paramatma, that means God, the universal soul? So, for that, they also started making life easy for the people, for the common people. And then what they wrote were under Upanishads. That means they were the rules in easy and common language so that the people could understand Upanishad. Okay. Many Upanishadic thinkers, many Upanishadic thinkers were men, in fact, Brahmins and Rajas. But there were women thinkers like Gargi, who was famous for her learning and participated in debates. Poor people had participated. One exception was Satyakama Jabala. He had a deep desire to know about reality. He was accepted by a Brahmin teacher called Gautama. He became one of the most learned thinkers of the time. Many ideas of the Upanishads were later developed by Shankaracharya. Now hold a pencil in your hand and we'll be marking various names here. Now, when various Upanishadic thinkers were men. That means men were the one who were taking up the part and they were belonging to the Brahmins and Rajas. So now this religion still did not include the lower castes. Okay. Now women were also given a chance. Underline Gargi. Now she was a woman at that time who was given the right to participate in debates, etc. Then poor people could hardly participate in these discussions, and there was one man of a poor lower caste called Satyakama Jabala. Underline his name. Now, he also wanted to participate. So he became a shishya. He became a, uh, you know, a disciple of a Brahmin teacher, and his name was Gautama. Please underline Gautama. And he became one of the most learned thinkers. So Satyakama Jabala, though he was of a lower caste and he was not allowed to join, but then he became a disciple of a Brahmin teacher called Gautama, and then through him he was able to preach his ideas. Okay, and later on, these Upanishads, these lovely work, was spread and developed by a man called Shankaracharya. Please underline his name. He was a prominent follower of Hinduism. Okay. Now the word Upanishad, underline Upanishad, consists three words: Upa, Ni, and Shad. Now Upa means near, past me. Okay. Ni means down, and Shad means be seated. To sit near the Guru, at the feet of the Guru. Okay. Now, so Upanishad means to be seated at the feet of the Guru to receive the teaching. I hope the meaning is clear. Please underline it also. Underline, be seated at the feet of the Guru to receive the teaching. The main topics of the Upanishads is the ultimate knowledge, the identity of Brahman and Brahma, and the Jivatma. These philosophical texts criticize rituals and laid stress on the value of right belief and knowledge. So now even Upanishads made a change and they talked of the ultimate knowledge, the knowledge through which we know about the Brahma, that means the Ishwar, and the Jivatma, that means the Ek Jeev Ki Atma, that means a common human being's soul, how it could reunite with right kind of belief and right kind of knowledge. Now there are 13 main Upanishads, underline 13. They were written between 8th and 4th century BC. The language of Upanishad is Sanskrit. Underline it. So it was still Sanskrit, but yes, it was simplified. Okay. Now, different Upanishads are related with the four Vedas. Now, there are different out of these 13 Upanishads, all these 13 talk of the Vedas which were written in the earlier times. They are the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. The longest and the oldest Upanishads are, please underline, Brihada Aranyaka. Brihada Aranyaka. Underline it. And the Chandogya Upanishad. Underline Chandogya Upanishad. These are the two which are the oldest of all. Okay. So with this we end this chapter. Now at the same time, there's one story given here below. I'll quickly read it and you'll understand it. You all must have read it also. The story of Anguli Mal and Gautam Buddha.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll just quickly read it.
Yes.
One day, when Angulimal, the dreaded dacoit, was wandering in the forest, he saw a monk. He was none other than Lord Buddha. Angulimal, one who wore garland of fingers of the victim, ran after him, but the monk was one step ahead of him. Angulimal shouted, "Stop moving!" The monk replied, "I am not moving. I am at rest. It is you who is in constant motion because of your discontent." Angulimal threatened to kill the Buddha and used his little finger for his garland. Buddha was not disturbed. He stretched out his arms to Angulimal. Angulimal was confused. He realized his mistake. He fell down at the feet of the Buddha and asked for mercy. The Buddha took Angulimal to his monastery. Angulimal listened to the Buddha's preaching. Gradually he transformed from a sinner to a saint. When King Prasenajit came to visit the Buddha, he told him about the change that had come over Angulimal. The king was very happy and left him in the Buddha's care. A few days later, some people saw Angulimal and recognized him. They thought perhaps it was a new trick. They beat him up, but Angulimal did not beat back. He dragged himself to the, to the Buddha's place. He placed his head on the Buddha's lap, saying, "Father, I am at last at peace with the world." The Buddha later said that Angulimal was a great soul. He had attained nirvana, that means salvation. So now let me quickly explain this story, though it is clear very easily. It is clear. So there was a man, a dacoit. Dacoit is Daku. Okay. So he was in the forest, and every passerby of the forest, whoever passed by, he used to stop that person, rob him, and then in return, he also chopped off the smaller finger, the little finger, and he made a garland out of those little fingers. So basically, he was a very cruel man. So one day, when Buddha was passing through the forest, Angulimal came across and he asked Buddha to stop. So Buddha said, "See, I am at peace. I am not moving anywhere. It is you who's moving around, and because you are not satisfied, because you are discontented, you have no aim to live for. That is why you are so constantly in motion." Now, listening to this, Angulimal realized his mistake, and from gradually he became from a sinner, he became a saint. And Buddha had also taken him to his monastery where he came in touch with the knowledge and learning and became the ardent follower of Buddhism. Later on, the king of those times, Prasenajit, who was ruling there, he was told when he visited Buddha, he was told how Angulimal had changed. Now people were not aware. They thought that, oh, he's a dacoit and this is his trick that he is doing. So they started beating him up. Later on, this Angulimal, he came back wounded to the monastery and he told Buddha that now he is at peace because he has whatever bad he had done to the world, he has accepted that bad in return when people could not understand that he has changed. So he got the beating and he did not retaliate. He did not hit those people back. So then it was later on when he died, Buddha said that yes, he was a man who was a person who had turned from a saint, from a sinner to a saint, and he had attained nirvana. That means
Should it
salvation.
not
That means he has crossed the chakra of birth and rebirth. Oh, the now is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
With
Yes.
with this, we come to an end of the chapter, and I'll be shortly